At a gathering with Harris's friends, his first love, Lynn, ignored my presence and said to him in their hometown dialect, "Harris, I want to have a child with you. But don't worry, it's just borrowing some sperm for in vitro fertilization, I won't pester you, and you know I'm against marriage." The people in the private room glanced at me with amusement and joined in the teasing in dialect. Harris probably won't agree, after all, his fiancée is here. I thought Harris would refuse outright, but unexpectedly, he held my hand tightly and looked at me affectionately, saying, "How could that be? I don't think Anna would mind, would she?" Everyone looked at me as if I were a fool, assuming I couldn't understand the dialect and would simply go along with Harris's words. But unexpectedly, I picked up the wine glass from the table, splashed it on both of their faces, and said in their dialect, "I do mind." The private room fell silent instantly, so quiet that the sound of a pin dropping could be heard. "But now, I don't care anymore, let's cancel our wedding." I stood up calmly, still speaking in their purest dialect. Someone in the private room moved, and Lynn wiped the water off her face with a tissue, hiding her embarrassment. "Anna, are you crazy? I was just joking with you, do you have to react like this?" "Sorry, I never joke about such things," I said seriously. Harris's face showed some anger, the water droplets on his face resembling emanating cold air. "Anna, apologize." "Why should I?" I, who was calm just a moment ago, nearly cried because of this sentence. No one knows how much effort I put into fitting into Harris's circle over the 10 years I've known him. Harris's parents minded that I wasn't local, so I worked hard to adapt to the customs here. I adapted to the food I didn't like, the weather I didn't enjoy, and the habits I disliked, all for him. I catered to his preferences, striving to become his ideal type, and even took time to learn the local dialect with natives. The coastal dialect is almost like a foreign language, and no one knows how much I struggled to learn it. Just tonight, when I thought I could finally understand them and fully integrate into their circle, I discovered they had been treating me like a fool and even planned to humiliate me to my face. "It was just a joke," Harris said, his voice still cold and slightly casual. "Even if it's a joke, boundaries must be respected." I was serious because, to me, this wasn't a trivial matter. Normally, if an outsider spoke about me like this, Harris would have lost his temper, but now he deliberately embarrassed me for Lynn. She's an outsider after all, so hard to get along with. Is such a small thing worth all this? At that moment, Lynn complained a little, then put on a magnanimous air, clicking her tongue twice. Fine, let's just let this go, we'll keep having fun." I knew arguing further would gain me nothing and only make things uglier. Though my heart was already breaking, I no longer wanted to wrong myself, so I grabbed my bag and headed for the door. "Harris, Anna seems really upset, maybe you should go after her." No need to indulge her tantrums, which fight hasn't ended with her coming back to make up on her own. Besides, she only has me to rely on here, where else could she go? As I closed the door, I heard mocking voices from the room again. "Harris still has his wife under control, after all these years, he's got Anna wrapped around his finger." A girl from some nameless small place, climbing up to Harris in Jing City, naturally has to be more submissive. Lynn's smug voice came from inside. "I thought after all these years apart, your taste had improved, but it seems not so much now." "Really?" "I think so too. Outsiders are always a bit lacking," Harris's nonchalant voice followed, "but it's been 10 years, and I'm used to it." My heart felt like it was being stabbed, and tears finally fell uncontrollably, but this time I wouldn't turn back. Perhaps seeing I wasn't returning, Harris called several times, but I hung up each time. He was never a patient person, and after 2 or 3 attempts, he stopped trying. After returning home, I began packing my bags. Just as I finished, Harris stood at the door with a cold expression. Seeing the luggage in my hands, his face darkened even more. "Anna, have you made enough of a fuss? Today was just an accident, didn't Lynn already apologize?" Harris, you've actually been planning to have a child with Lynn for a while, haven't you? I didn't want to beat around the bush and directly exposed his lie. A few months ago, you said you were on a business trip, but you were actually accompanying Lynn for a checkup, weren't you? Harris's face grew colder. Anna, are you spying on me? I threw the paper in my hand at him. I'm not that bored. Some time ago, while washing his clothes, I found a hospital checkup slip and thought he was unwell. Knowing he often stayed up late working, I bought him medicines and supplements. How laughable only now did I realize he got that checkup just to facilitate having a child with Lynn. Harris held the crumpled paper I'd thrown, finally understanding what was going on. Yet he still didn't see anything wrong with himself, saying, Anna, you know Lynn's situation, she's against marriage. She's just reached marriageable age and can't explain it to her family, so she wants a child. I won't marry her, and even if we have a child, it'll only be through in vitro fertilization. There'll be no physical contact between us. What's there for you to worry about? I found it utterly ridiculous, and the anger in my heart burst out as I shouted, will that child call you daddy in the future? Or will that child also get a share of your future wealth? Anna, Lynn isn't as vile as you think, Harris said, his face serious and stern. Yes, Lynn isn't vile, I overthought it. So let's end this between us. Have a child with whoever you want in the future. After saying that, I started to leave with my luggage, but Harris grabbed me. Anna, enough is enough. If you dare step out of this house, we're completely done. His certainty that I wouldn't leave made my heart ache bitterly. In the past, I might have been swayed by his threat, but not now. I brushed off his hand and left resolutely. As I went downstairs, small snowflakes began to fall from the sky. My heart was as cold as the Jing City weather. Harris eventually chased after me. When he looked at me, there was a hint of anger in his eyes, but his tone softened upon seeing my hurt expression. Anna, I know you can't accept this now, but you know Lynn helped me during my toughest times. If she weren't against marriage, we'd have wed long ago. Now she just wants a child, it's not excessive. Blatantly producing an illegitimate child, and he didn't think it was excessive? She helped you, but I saved your life. I put down my suitcase, lifted my shirt, and revealed a scar on my abdomen. Have you forgotten? That year, if I hadn't taken that knife for you, you'd be dead. He wanted to repay Lynn's kindness, but how would he repay mine? Harris stared at my skin, scarred and tattooed with his favorite gardenia flower, and was momentarily stunned. Perhaps it rekindled memories of his most painful times. He took a deep breath, approached me, crouched down, wrapped his long hands around my waist, and pressed his face against my abdomen. Still using his gentlest voice, he said words colder than the wind and snow, so, give her a child, and then I'll give you one. Wouldn't that be perfect? I never imagined Harris could be so shameless. The love I once felt vanished in that moment. Anna, you know I don't like owing anyone. Give Lynn a child, and I'll have no more burdens. Otherwise, you wouldn't want me to marry you while still dwelling on her kindness, would you? I couldn't hold back anymore and pushed him to the ground. Harris, you disgust me. Get out. I took my suitcase and hailed a taxi, letting the increasingly heavy snowflakes fall, never looking back, nor would I ever. Harris watched my retreating figure but didn't chase after me again. I had nowhere to go, so I stayed at a hotel temporarily. That night, I thought about booking a ticket home, but due to the heavy snow, there were no flights. The earliest one was the next afternoon. I wasn't in a hurry and instead calmed down. The next morning, my room's doorbell rang. I thought it was housekeeping, but when I opened the door, it was Harris. I almost shut the door without thinking, but he held it open with his hand. Anna, there's a limit to being unreasonable, enough is enough. To hell with your enough is enough. I cursed loudly and, while Harris was stunned, slammed the door shut with force. But it didn't close this time either, because as I was shutting it, Lynn rushed over and got caught in the middle. The door hit her hard, likely with significant force. "Anna, aren't you going too far?" Harris said with a cold face, shielding Lynn in his arms, his icy gaze fixed on me. Though I'd given up on him, that look still chilled me. "Harris, it's fine," Lynn said, enduring the pain with a smile at him, then turning to me. "Anna, I have something to say to you. After all, it's about the issue, not the person." Though I didn't like Lynn, I felt some guilt for hitting her just now, so I agreed to her request. Harris didn't come in, just stood guard at the door. I knew he was afraid I might hurt Lynn. "Anna, it's useless if you don't agree to this," Lynn said, stroking her abdomen with a boastful tone before I could grasp what she meant. Her meaning was clear: she was pregnant. I was shocked, but upon reflection, it all made sense. The last checkup was months ago. It's normal she'd be pregnant by now. So, she knew I understood the dialect and said it on purpose for me to hear. It's not an in vitro baby either. It happened when Harris got drunk on that business trip. He didn't want to tell you, afraid you'd be hurt, but rest assured, I'll have the child and won't interfere with your marriage. I didn't speak, just found it utterly absurd. Lynn smiled again. "Besides, we've been together so long, and you haven't gotten pregnant. Don't you find that strange?" She subconsciously glanced at my abdomen. "I heard you were injured when you saved Harris." It was the last thing we wanted to mention. So, Harris had told her even this? "You're lucky. Harris is someone who values old ties. He'll definitely marry you. If you're willing in the future, you can even take this child to raise." I looked at her coldly. "You want Harris's love and his wealth too? Raise her child to inherit the property Harris and I share as a couple?" They weren't just shameless, they were disgusting. Lynn flicked her hair, exuding charm. "At first, I thought Harris's heart was cold, that he'd never fall in love, but when I saw how he looked at you, I realized he could love after all. When I was with him, I never got the things you've effortlessly received, so now, I've changed my mind." After speaking, she deliberately fell onto the nearby bed. I was startled and hadn't reacted when the sound of the door opening rang out. Lynn said aggrievedly, "Anna, I know you hate me, but you can't just hit me like this." I instantly understood her intent, and as Harris came in, I raised my hand, ready to slap back. "If we're acting, why not do it properly? Lynn, the things you covet, I no longer care for. Take Harris if you want him. Yes, I was injured, but I'm not infertile, so stop using a child to disgust me." I wasn't lying. The doctor said my uterus wasn't damaged. I'm not infertile. So how did she imagine I couldn't have children? "Anna, you've gone too far," Harris said, rushing over and grabbing my hand without hesitation, slapping me across the face. "Lynn came to persuade you for our sake, and if you wouldn't listen, fine, but how could you hurt her?" When the slap landed, all three of us froze. In all the years I'd been with Harris, he might not have treated me exceptionally well, but he at least had basic gentlemanly manners. Hitting a woman, let alone me, was something he wouldn't do to anyone. But now, he'd hit me for Lynn. Yes, I knew it. No matter what I did, Lynn's place in his heart was different. Harris looked at his hand in disbelief, a trace of guilt in his cold eyes. But at that moment, Lynn clutched her stomach. "Harris, my stomach hurts." The guilt on Harris's face vanished, replaced by full-blown anger. "Anna, if anything happens to Lynn, you won't be able to bear the responsibility." With that, he pushed me down, walked to the bed, picked up Lynn, and rushed out. At that moment, Lynn flashed me a smug smile. Heartache and anger consumed me, but even more so, fury. I could be hurt by love, but why should I let a scumbag and a wretch hit me? With no more hesitation, I grabbed the glass from the nightstand and threw it at Harris's back. "Harris, I didn't touch her. You're an idiot. Even my parents never hit me. What gives you the right?" "I'm calling the police." My stance was unusually firm. I could leave quietly if hurt, but to openly hit me, no one would get away with that easily. Harris, hurry to the hospital, Lynn said, pressing her face into his chest with a pained expression. My stomach hurts so much. Harris's face was as cold as ice. Anna, it's only because Lynn is generous and won't hold it against you otherwise, I wouldn't let you off today. Don't worry, I won't delay Lynn's treatment. I'll call the police to the hospital. I didn't touch Lynn at all, let's see how she keeps pretending. Lynn's face paled, not expecting me to be so relentless. She hurriedly said, Anna, I know you were angry and lost control, but I forgive you now. It's just the child in my belly, it's still early, so let's go to the hospital first. Harris looked at me. Anna, if you have any conscience, don't go too far. With that, he carried Lynn out the door. Naturally, I wouldn't let myself be bullied like this, so I followed them to the hospital. I wanted to see what was wrong with the child in her belly. Under my watchful eye, Lynn finished her examination. The patient is fine, the doctor said. She's just pregnant, early term, avoid strenuous activity. Lynn pursed her lips. But I was just pushed down, will the baby be okay? There are no bad signs so far, if you're still worried, stay for observation, the doctor replied. I said, so, the baby was fine all along. Harris gave me a cold look, then turned to comfort Lynn. You're okay because the baby in your belly is strong, but that doesn't mean Anna's innocent. Standing aside, hearing this, I felt utterly wretched. Years of love and the grace of saving his life couldn't outweigh a lie from his first love. Anna, you saw it, Lynn's pregnant, and because of you, she nearly miscarried, but the child's safe now. Lynn doesn't want to pursue what just happened, she just wants to rest, so go back. He paused. But rest assured, I said I'd marry you, and we'll have children too. He spoke as if granting me a grand favor I should gratefully accept. Though my heart had fused with the ice and snow, I still felt a piercing pain. I looked at them mockingly. Your business may be settled, but ours isn't. I called out, Officer, I'm the one who reported the case just now. A uniformed officer entered, and Harris's face darkened. Anna, stop being endless and ungrateful. He couldn't understand Lynn had let it go, so how dare she still call the police? I looked at Lynn's pale face and smiled. It's hard to say who's really ungrateful. Harris patted Lynn's shoulder. Don't be afraid. Then he turned to the officer. Officer, you're just in time. Anna pushed a pregnant woman down, I saw it with my own eyes. I'd thought Harris was shameless, but I didn't expect him to lie so blatantly for Lynn. He chose to stand against me without hesitation. I thought I'd be heartbroken, but at that moment, I wasn't. I looked at him mockingly. My calm demeanor caused him a flicker of panic. He leaned in, whispering so only I could hear, Lynn's already let you off, why are you so relentless? She's pregnant now and can't handle this stress. Don't blame me for lying, it's what you deserve. But rest assured, I'll still keep my promise to marry you. At that moment, I wasn't flustered, I even smiled as I looked at him. Harris didn't understand clearly, the situation was against me, so why was I smiling? It must be that he usually spoiled her too much, thinking it was just a joke with her. Officer, here's the hotel surveillance from just now, see for yourselves what happened. Amid his stunned expression, I took out my phone and played the hotel surveillance. Everything Lynn did and said was crystal clear. Lynn, who'd been watching from the side, paled. Harris, I'm sorry. I just felt unwell back there and lay on the bed, it was my mistake. Harris hadn't expected the truth to be like this, yet he still didn't side with me, instead loudly questioning, Anna, aren't you going too far, installing surveillance in the hotel? It's the hotel room I'm staying in, why can't I install it? In all these years with Harris, if I've learned nothing else, I've learned to protect myself. Last night, staying alone in the hotel, I was scared, so I set up a tiny camera indoors, just in case something happened. It was an unintentional act, but it became the key to proving my innocence. I'd grown used to Harris's blatant bias. "Officer, I didn't push a pregnant woman, rather, I was wrongly accused and hit. I hope the law can give me justice." This time I wouldn't soften, nor would I let them think I was easy to bully. Harris and Lynn went to the police station, and since I refused to settle, they both had to be detained. However, Harris had great influence and got out quickly with a lawyer. Lynn wasn't so lucky, she had to stay overnight, likely for a statement. I didn't think such a small matter would keep her in there long. One night wouldn't reform her, but it at least made me feel better. Taking advantage of this gap, I bought an afternoon ticket home. But as I was boarding, Harris's mother arrived with a lawyer. "Tell me, how much money will it take for you to let Lynn go?" Harris's mother never liked me from the start. Since I'd been with Harris, she'd never given me a kind look. If not for Harris's insistence, we wouldn't have made it this far. "Auntie, it's not about money." "Stop pretending I know what you're after," she said. Before, I could turn a blind eye, but now Lynn's carrying our Fu family's grandson. 1 million, sign the forgiveness letter and leave my son. I pursed my lips, glanced at a figure in the distance, and smiled instantly. "Fine." Harris's mother sighed in relief, though with a hint of disdain. Outsiders always swayed by money. I was already angry, and that remark set me off. I sneered, "Sorry, Auntie, not anymore." You're going back on your word?" "Us outsiders may be swayed by money, but that was just the price for the forgiveness letter. After all, I did save your son's life back then. 20 million, no more." "Deal. From now on, I won't appear before you. But it has to be done legally and properly." I'd seen plenty of rich people's tactics over the years. Their money doesn't come easy, and it's not easy to take. I didn't want to end up getting myself in trouble. Harris's mother raised an eyebrow but complied, having the lawyer fill out a pre-prepared gift contract. She called her secretary to transfer 20 million from her personal account, fearing I'd back out if she delayed a second longer. It seemed she'd anticipated this, and I didn't mind. After seeing the money hit my card, I signed the forgiveness letter. As I left, I glanced at a figure in the airport corner and boarded the plane without hesitation. After I was gone, Harris emerged from a nearby lounge. "I told you long ago she was just after money, but you wouldn't believe me," Harris's mother said earnestly to her son. "Enough, go back and live well with Lynn." Harris didn't actually believe I'd abandon him for 20 million. If he hadn't seen me take the money with his own eyes, he'd have thought his mother tricked him. He truly couldn't understand. Though Lynn's child was his, it wouldn't affect their lives, so why wouldn't she agree? Plus, with his billions, any fool would know what to choose. She once loved him so much, even willing to die for him. How could she not tolerate this? Or was her past love for him all a lie? Harris seemed struck, saying to his mother, "Mom, I never wanted to be with Lynn from start to finish, I only wanted to marry Anna." Harris's mother was stunned, unable to comprehend her son. "If you're not marrying Lynn, why have a child with her?" "If I were Anna, I wouldn't agree either." Harris said, but Lynn's against marriage, she just wants a child to give her family an explanation." "Fine, I won't meddle in you young people's affairs." Not marrying but having a child, ruining the original wedding plans, what nonsense. Harris's mother left angrily, but Harris regretted it. As for me, back home, facing my parents' questions, I didn't want to elaborate, just said the wedding was off. I gave them some money, and they shut up. Then I went traveling. In fact, even without Harris's mother's money, what Harris gave me over time, plus my own savings from these years, was enough to sustain me for a long while. Half a month later, the doorbell of my hotel room rang. This time, I was cautious and didn't open it until I saw through the peephole it was a delivery person. But as I opened the door, Harris stepped out from behind the delivery person. I frowned slightly at his still stern face. "Harris, what are you doing here? There should be nothing left between us, right? Anna, you've had your break, vented your anger, time to go back." With that, he stepped around me and started packing my clothes inside. He took the food I'd just ordered, and I got angry. Harris, are you insane? We've broken up. But Harris ignored me, continuing to pack my luggage. Furious, I interrupted him. Harris, get out. If you stay here any longer, I'll call the police. Anna, there's a limit to throwing tantrums. This time, you win. Come back with me, the wedding will proceed as planned. You're truly sick. Without hesitation, I grabbed a nearby bottle of water and poured it over his head. Are you awake now? Harris grabbed my hands. I lifted my face. What, want to hit me again? A trace of remorse flashed in his eyes as he gently touched my cheek. Last time, I was just too anxious, it wasn't intentional. I pushed him away and called the police. The guilt in his eyes instantly turned to anger. He didn't take my call seriously. Anna, what do you want? I've come for you, even humbled myself. Except for Lynn's matter, which I can't agree to, I'll satisfy everything else, okay? I was sure he was unhinged and didn't bother saying more. Only when the police arrived did I say, Officer, someone's harassing me. She's my fiancée, she's just throwing a fit, Harris said with red eyes. The police looked at me. Miss, what's going on? We've broken up, and now he's harassing me. The officer understood and took Harris away. Only when I left him at the police station did Harris believe I was truly determined to end things with him. As I left, I saw the hatred in his eyes and knew he wouldn't let it go so easily, so I bought a ticket that night and flew to another city. Fortunately, Harris only targeted me, not my parents. I spent a year traveling, hiding, until I unexpectedly heard from a friend that Harris had married, and only then did I feel relieved. That day, I decided to return home. My friend from Jing City messaged me, did you know? Harris had a flash marriage with someone from a blind date. I'd thought that after I left, Harris would openly be with Lynn, but surprisingly, they weren't. I was curious, and my friend messaged again, did you know? Lynn aborted the child, saying things too easily obtained aren't worth much. Seeing you gone and Harris so dejected made her happy. She didn't actually like Harris that much, she just couldn't stand seeing him so happy. Before I could reply, she sent more messages nonstop. Harris's family was furious about it and arranged a marriage for him. He'd resisted before, but this time he agreed right away. Hearing this, I had doubts. Did Lynn really not like Harris? No, those loving eyes, I couldn't have misread them. Lynn couldn't possibly dislike Harris or give up such a great opportunity. There must be some hidden reason. But it had nothing to do with me, and I returned home that night. I thought it was all over, but that day, my friend messaged again, did you know? At Harris's wedding, the bride backed out. They say Harris told the bride in front of everyone he was infertile, and if she could accept it, the wedding would go on. She cried on the spot and refused. Speaking of which, is it true Harris can't have kids? They say when you saved him, he was injured in a critical spot. Could he really be incapable? I suddenly understood why Lynn chose to abort her child, because it wasn't Harris's. Or perhaps Harris, knowing his condition, forced her to do it. Lost in thought, I heard a noise outside. When I went out, I saw Harris sitting on the sofa while my parents warmly entertained him. Irritated, I found an excuse to take him outside. Harris, will you ever stop? I demanded. Harris pursed his lips. I've explained it to your parents. The Fu family business will go to my brother, and I can stay with you forever. Huh, what makes you think I'd take you back? Harris was stunned, then looked hurt. Anna, the child in Lynn's belly wasn't mine. Not yours? Then didn't you sleep together that night? Harris choked. Anna, now even you mind? Do you despise me too? We're long over leave, at least don't make me sick of you. I thought this time Harris would react as fiercely as before, but surprisingly, he was calm. "Anna, I know you're upset, but don't worry, I'll wait." I thought he was just talking, but he meant it. The next day, as I left, I saw him coming out from across the hall. "Morning." His smile felt unbearably glaring to me. In the past, even knowing Harris was infertile, I'd have stayed by him. But people are like that. Once disgusted, those pure, beautiful feelings fade away. The once exhausted resentment felt meaningless at this moment, leaving only indifference and calm. "Harris, stop wasting your effort. We're done, and I won't turn back." "It's fine, I know you're angry, I'll wait," he insisted, and I had no way to stop him. Over time, the neighbor's harsh words grew unavoidable. Later, I made a bold decision to leave the city with my parents, planning to live elsewhere for a while. 6 months later, I learned Harris had returned to Jing City after I left. He thought you wouldn't return because of his infertility, so he tried high-tech methods to prove he could still conceive, but sadly, it all failed, my friend said endlessly in a video. But speaking of it, though Harris lost his fertility, he uncovered the truth about his injury back then. I was stunned. The truth? Yes, it turns out it was Lynn's ex who hired someone, thinking Harris stole her because she was too timing, not knowing Lynn and Harris had already broken up by then. I sighed deeply. 2 days later, I received news of Lynn and Harris's deaths. They fell from a building together. 3 years later, I returned home with my parents and married someone from a blind date. A year later, our child came into this world,